It's 6:14. I am starting the Legislation Bylaw and Policy Committee meeting today, June 27th. Hi, nice to see everyone. So I'm calling the meeting to order. No need to do introductions. It's been a whole year for the community board. We know each other well now. New business, there is none. We're gonna go straight to old business. Old business, before starting with City of Yes, I do want to make a modification and add TOPA. I do want to give everyone's update. TOPA, despite how close we were, did not pass. Serrano was at our meeting. State Senator Serrano was at our meeting. A full board meeting was Thursday. I did get his card. He did say that he looks forward to letters in support of the policy going forward. I think it did get really, really close. Obviously, the last day, I think TOPA State Assemblies made some modification. I believe it was sent back. The Senate made some modification, was sent back to the Assembly, but I might be confused about another bill I'm tracking. But people thought TOPA was promising. What's the Mount Haven building you told me about in our district that is buying their building?
That would require me to look at my notes.
Okay, so I spoke, so there is a building in Mount Haven that is buying their building. They're actually in the process. And if TOPA was in existence, those processes would be sooner. TOPA, for people who don't know, it's Tenant Opportunity Purchase Act. That means if your building is for sale, you as the tenants have first right of purchase.
Is this 333 East what 50th?
What, the building? Is that the address of the building? Whitney did give us like a brief presentation about it last month. She has to pull up her notes, but I spoke to a woman. I was at a South Bronx Unite meeting, totally not relevant, and I talked about TOPA, and she is the face of the movement, and told me that she was part of a public hearing in Albany about this, and she thought the bill was going to pass. She was very, very promised, and it's surprising that the bill had not passed, and I brought that up to Serrano, that was something we were interested in. So hopefully, in regards to old business, during the summer we have insurance, potentially Whitney and I and other people can make sure that we get a letter of support queued up for the legislative session in September, given the fact that the process has to start all over again. And hopefully Serrano now knows how serious Community Board 1 is about the Tenant Opportunity Purchasing Act. I definitely asked that question at the full board meeting, okay? He didn't look so surprised, but he did confirm that he signed off on the bill. So I do want to make sure that that is something that I didn't think we would have to follow through because it would have been passed, and it did not. Okay, so the bulk of our meeting today is about City of Yes housing opportunity. City of Yes housing opportunity is the last portion of Department of City Planning's huge agenda to change the regulations of the city. The goal of City of Yes is to build more supply, and if they build more supply, that means more units, then rent will go down. I do not believe that to be true, but the first thing I want to talk about of the documents is Yes to the Housing Coalition. This is a letter that they sent out on May 34th to community boards. There's a lot of companies, organizations that I think a lot of us really, really respect that have signed on to this. I'm very surprised by that. The letter just pretty much says that they're supporting City of Yes without any modifications. I spoke to Brendan Cheney because I said, why no modifications? And he explained that there is no denying that there's not enough apartment units in New York City. That is undeniable. And City of Yes, if its sole goal is to deregulate the market, the regs, to increase a little bit of housing everywhere, then DCP's portion is only one portion of a bigger goal, okay? But I think this City of Yes presentation was first presented to Economic Land Use and Development. So we've heard the presentation. multiple times, and the goal is to build a little bit of housing everywhere. Some of the issues in particular in CB1, which I brought up to DCP, was Mount Haven is one of the neighborhoods who is the neighborhood with the rent increase the highest, 85% increase according to New York Times. I'll email everybody that article. I forgot to print it out, you guys, but we are number one based on last year rent increase, obviously primarily because of the rezoning in Bruckner. So all those luxury buildings really changed our rent increase. And so a little bit of housing everywhere really does not decrease rent. When we built a lot, everybody in DCP agrees that Community Board 1 has really developed the most housing supply in all the neighborhoods of New York City. We're like top 5 of increase in supply. I said, how come our rent didn't go down if we built so much? They said it's because no one else is building. So because no one else is building, everyone is moving here. I said, I really would love to see the studies behind that. So yeah. I don't really agree. So, okay, so I wanted you guys to see this now. Obviously, they wanted us to support this. We don't even have quorum here, but I just wanted to at least say with good hearts that this is a letter that was presented to the board about an organization that agrees City of Yes. Okay, so the next document I want us to really hold close is this. City of Yes housing opportunity. It looks like this. It's a checklist. What we decided at the full board meeting, you guys, is that every time we should have voted on this as a full board, City of Yes housing. We did not, you guys. And the borough board vote is July 8th, and we are going to abstain. DCP.
When were we supposed to, like, ideally, when did we receive this, and when should we have been able to present it to the board?
So it was first introduced to land use economic development in May, I believe.
Okay.
In May. And then we would have voted on it
at a full board meeting.
At the full board meeting in June. Now, so hold on to this because don't get it lost in your stock. So we're going to keep going back to this. Some of the issues I have, and I'm going to just be blue in the face, and I'm black, so maybe purple in the face, is City of Yes economic opportunities. Sorry, you don't have the full presentation. I sent, there's a YouTube where DCP present this. I'll email it to you. And it was, you've seen the presentation a million times with me. Sorry, I keep on forgetting. They have not seen the presentation besides the YouTube video I sent to them. Okay, perfect. Sorry, multiple boards, multiple committees. They give us presentations, you guys, and we, for some odd reason, do not have experts to really dissect the information. So this document right here, this document, which is the slideshow version,
right,
is by George M. James. And the reason why it says Manhattan Community Board is that this is the expert summary of the DCP document. The DCP presentation slideshow is like, I want to tell you guys, maybe it's like an hour, maybe 45-minute presentation, but the raw document is 1,300 pages. And so when someone reduces something and doesn't give me the raw material, I'm always like, you left something out, okay? So I really am going to figure this out in the next 2 months, why CB11 gets an urban planning expert and we are left to fend for ourselves. And that is completely, honestly, appalling. Okay, so I called George. That's his name. He's really popular in that CB11. I called him. I told him I've watched his YouTubes. I've heard about it, and I wanted to talk to him. And he voluntarily gave me this document since it's public records. Given the fact that it's at CB11, it's considered public records. So he gave it to me. Now, obviously, this document is dated June 19th. I just felt like we needed something like this or time to research our own before we could vote on City of Yes housing opportunity. And as a result, we've never had a chance to vote on it. Now, what has been discussed in economic development and land use is that maybe we have a town hall about it in the summer. Borough board vote is usually perfunctory, right? Once it comes from borough board, it'll go to city council. in the fall. They're hoping to vote on it in December. DCP itself is taking feedback until July 24th, even further. I spoke to John Mangan. Mangan is the head of housing division at DCP. If we get it to them in September, they'll take it in September, you guys, okay? But for our board vote, we're going to be abstaining. Any discussion, I'm still going to fully engage in discussion, but we are going to be abstaining from that vote. Okay, so where I would love to start by is have an open discussion about thoughts and feelings. But first, I'm going to tell you guys what I've learned. What City of Yes is doing is building a little bit of housing everywhere, but specific for us, we're a medium and high density zone, and so we get buildings. And I think one of the things we've discussed heavily in the other committee is affordability. Okay, guarantee for affordability. There are no guarantees, but what people feel is people like tax credits. Developers have always taken tax credits. They will continue to take tax credits, and taking those tax credits will get the incentive. What we get in exchange for the tax credit is 60% AMI, which is much better than we've ever had before. Currently, when you're in the lottery, it's 80% AMI. 60% AMI is much lower. Also, if you take that tax credit, it's permanent. Some of the tax credits that are currently in existence have sunset clause. So, but the tax credit why will the developer get the tax credit and gets to build a little bit more housing, which means they take up more space and they can sell to more people. And then they're going to give us, and then the more units will be 60% AMI. Okay.
That's the UAP.
It's called UAP, you guys. Okay. That's what they have. How do we feel about it? I think that's not enough guarantees. The UAP, but that's what they have, and they feel like that would create a lot of secure housing, university affordability preference. I want you guys, if you guys have this thing, it's page 7. It's page 7, topic 5. So when you hear topics in here, the topics go with this. We're gonna vote. Well, it should be voted by this. That's what we did last time. But anyways, this is topic 5. This is where they explain UAP. 60%, yeah, it's usually 20%. Yeah, now we're gonna go down to 60%. That's gonna be that's one incentive, which is opt-in. And then I asked about mandatory affordable housing. Westchester County has that. Boston has that. DCP's position is that if you make anything mandatory, people won't develop housing. They think it's an obstacle for housing. I don't agree, but that's what they say.
So
tell me more.
I'll just throw out, so I did listen to the recording, and I think one of the distinctions that George makes is that if we believe that the housing crisis is a problem of affordability, or we think it's a problem of supply, because there are two differences here. Like a little bit of housing in a few places doesn't necessarily improve our vacancy rate, or will improve our vacancy rate, but it doesn't make the housing that people currently have more affordable. It doesn't cap rent prices. It doesn't provide eviction support. It doesn't provide housing attorneys. There are all these other mechanisms for ensuring that people who are currently feeling the pressure and burden of the affordability crisis and cost of living in New York City, that this doesn't address. So I think just to be clear-eyed about what this does, and what we can expect to see is that it would improve the number of apartments. It would increase the number of apartments. But whether or not those are family-sized apartments, whether or not they're affordable, whether or not they'll actually, even 60% AMI, if that is appropriate for the income in our district, I don't know. So those are the questions that I still have outstanding.
I'm floored by this. I don't know where my version of this is, but if you guys look at this document, I don't know where it is, but it's the New York City Council calls for deeper investments into housing. And the reason I bring this up when you are talking with me is they go in on here. City Council is asking for don't ask me why I printed like this, you guys, but they're asking for $3.6 billion over the next 5 years to address affordability. And in here, they also talk about making income that is 50% AMI, 30% AMI. And when I was talking to these people who did this policy, they were talking about companion bills, meaning
But this isn't the end all be all.
and DCP talks about this is working in tandem. So when you talk about the housing crisis is a Siamese twin, one side being supply, one side being affordability. And what I told DCP is, in your power, are you maximizing what you can do to guarantee affordability? And I know they are not.
Yeah.
They are not. They believe the tax incentives is enough and that mandatory set aside affordability, which they can make into law, would deter development, and I think that is false. However, I have to tell you, based on my research, which is why I'd love to talk to Salamanca and things like that, I was trying to invite to this meeting, I don't see enough people pushing for that.
Yeah.
The mandatory and very loud advocates are pushing for blank bills. But then I found that City Council's budget will be approved, at least a version of it, before the final version of the budget will be approved before City of Yes housing is passed. Because they got to approve something by July 1st, and then they can make amendments in November. So we will see if the $3.6 billion commitment for 5 years is done.
Yeah.
And therefore, the things about affordability, they're asking for money to go to HPD. I don't know what the HPD open door program even is, but they are saying, what we're saying is affordability for housing and affordability for renters and homeowners. They're talking about renters and homeowners affordability access in this. Sorry. They're talking about both for that. And so our community is getting hit a lot. There's a studio apartment. There's a new building that came up over there, and that building is hella expensive.
Sorry, I did just look up the open door program.
Yeah.
HPD's open door program funds the new construction of co-ops and condominiums buildings affordable to moderate and middle income households.
Okay. They're asking for, in City Council's proposal, for $732 million, is $250 for the HPD's open door program. And then, so that's what they're asking for. $650 million for the open door program is to increase support for that. Yep.
Interesting.
And then,
that increases home ownership and equity and wealth building and middle.
And that's what we want.
Houses.
That's what we want. They're going to do 75 million affordable housing units for very low income, 50% to extremely low, 30%. And then they want $50 million for 80% AMI. I don't think we do. If we pass City of Yes, then HPD no longer needs to fund 80% AMI, because now we're going to be in the 60% AMI world. I don't know. But this is what I think, again, when we talk about why didn't we vote, I think there's information that we didn't have to vote on this stuff. And we don't know what companion bills are going to be packaged and pushed. Before I start, just really addressing this line by line, section by section that applies to us, you guys, I also wanted to discuss another thing about is affordability. Another thing is supportive housing. We have a member, you guys, who has big feelings about the high concentration of supportive housing in our district.
In the committee?
in the committee. No, well, not in this committee, but in the community board, a board member of us, very big feelings about that. And the high concentration of supportive housing is having a direct impact on the quality of life of the residents of Mount Haven and Melrose. And supportive housing is expanded in City of Yesville. It makes it easier, and some of us would argue it is already too easy to build supportive housing. And as one of our board members stated, we are poverty dumped and we get luxury buildings and we get a lot of supportive housing here. And so one of the concerns I did voice with DCP on behalf of our member is there restrictions going to be made about supportive housing development in areas that are already overwhelmed with some, right? No is the answer. And I think that is another level of advocacy that is really important for us to touch on. We believe everyone has a right to housing, but we think a little bit of supportive housing needs to also go everywhere, and not a lot of supportive housing in a little bit of places.
Right, because that, like, this should align with fair share.
It should align with fair share. But currently the bill says nothing about that.
And that was
Go
a
ahead.
main thing that made me support that board member supportive of being so against supportive housing. I'm not against affordable housing. And I agree with bringing that to our district. My question is, and I said this at the land trust, there are too many gaps that are not being answered. Okay, and we got to get very clear on what supportive housing really is, which I know a lot of people don't kind of have that perspective, but there have already been too many examples of housing geared to a certain population or so-called being supported that have not worked in our district. I gave the example, that's not really our district. 166th Street and Franklin Avenue, that was that big St. Augustine church that they knocked down. They built a senior unit there. I understand it's a total disaster. Okay, even the news had a special report on it. That's called, I think that's the St. Augustine Plaza is what it's called, but the people they get bad maintenance. Their elevator system doesn't work. It's just one complaint on top of the other. If anybody speaks to the tenants who are actually there, like I said, one time the news even made a special report. So that is one example of my questions regarding this whole perspective. City of Yes, I said this at the land trust committee. Yes, we did get to see the whole presentation, right? And again, my question is, the gaps are not being answered.
So I do want to say again, they constantly, as DCP right now, constantly saying this is going to work in tandem. That press release I printed out, you guys, from City Council does talk about giving money to Department of Buildings, because there's an issue about our building maintenance, it's like you were just discussing, buildings are not being upkept.
And that's just a small example to parallel what has actually gone on. This all sounds good on paper. We're going to do supportive housing. We're going to get affordable housing to the people so that they can move. But we are already looking at the results of the past incentives, and we're seeing that it did not work.
So,
and that has not been answered today.
So I did ask why is Bruckner why isn't there more MIH mandatory inclusion housing because that definitely changed community density because it was completely rezoned.
Yeah.
So mandatory inclusion, is that MIH?
MIH.
Yeah. Was 2016. Bruckner was approved before that.
Mm-hmm.
The rezoning was approved before that. And therefore that is why it wasn't there. So when I brought up and pushed back this narrative, that's when they stated it did increase density, but mandatory inclusionary housing was not in existence when that rezoning occurred.
But doesn't that show that if you give private developers the opportunity, because they could have still received some tax benefits for creating affordable housing in those developments without the UAP, those provisions, those tax incentives exist now, maybe in a different form, maybe they sunset earlier, but
They do exist now, so
They
right
were available in 2000 and
I'm
whenever,
positively sure
yeah,
they
the
do get
zoning
tax
was,
incentives on
whatever
that.
rezoning happened, development happened, and they didn't include that.
Mhm.
None of those units are.
and that's why I get really, one of the things
I'm sure that they do get tax incentives.
they do. So like it went
Sure
from
they do.
For,
420.
for developing the area, but not for making it
Sure they
affordable.
do.
Yeah, so they tax exempt. The current tax exempt that's in the state laws is 421 something,
Mhm.
and that's a 30-year, and that was in existence. And now the state just passed a new one, 425X or something, which is which is 40 years now, but the units will last forever. But you guys, this is why I hope my goal for this committee is like, I'm very concerned we get the short end of the sticks because we're not putting enough pressure. That is my thing. Because if you watch the presentation, East Harlem Neighborhood Project, that thing sounded amazing. Like, wow. They were like preserving affordable housing, revamping affordable housing, creating affordable housing for this little neighborhood of East Harlem.
Yeah.
And how do they get a special project and we get these beautiful buildings that increase our rent 85% on average now? So I'm very concerned about our advocacy and trying to understand, like, we're not yelling at the wrong people because DCP can only do but so much, right? HPD is a different agency in its entirety, which is why I printed out the city council thing, because that is something we 110% support, that HPD, which I told DCP, we 100% trust HPD. We don't know what you have to do, but we know what HPD does, that they get their money and that they get their set-asides. So,
Do we know Diana Ayala's stance on any of this? As like the councilwoman, both in East Harlem and in Mount Haven?
no, we haven't talked to anybody. I tried to reach out to, but that was just yesterday, very short notice, to Salamanca because he's a land use person. I think Diana Ayala would also be very interesting because of the fact that East Harlem Neighborhood Project happened when she was, no, that's 2013, but she will still know because she was still
around.
working there. Exactly.
Still around.
She was still around in 2013 about how they got this special niche. And East Harlem and Mount Haven, which is why I think the report George wrote for East Harlem is very useful for us because our neighborhoods are very similar and we struggle with the same issues. We're both, our CB1 is medium to high density, you guys, okay? And so is obviously East Harlem. So I think that's why there's a lot of similarities. So I would actually think you're right, Diana Ayala would be very useful to see the push. And I would have expected other people to be pushing this, but I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it well, which is why the press release from City Council shows me that there's things that people are planning, and budget is going to be approved before City of Yes is approved. You know what I mean? So I don't know how it is to be in City Council, but if people want to make change, they can use the City of Yes vote to push more things. I don't know.
I was gonna say, when are the budget hearings? Like,
Budget hearings are coming to a vote. They have July 1st. I mean, they got to get something done.
We likely have a budget deal tonight. It is announced, the press release.
Oh, okay, honey, they got to get something.
That the mayor and the speaker have likely come to an agreement.
Yeah, so that's good. That's early for them. So July 1st.
because I was just gonna say, how do we ensure that these things get in the budget? Because this will be the incentive. Like,
Yeah,
we will support City of Yes if we know that these things
this
are
money's
coming.
coming. Yeah, so we find out tonight what's in the budget, or by Monday next week we find out what's in the budget. In addition to that, we all know budgets can be modified up to November.
Yeah.
November, there's a open modification time. And therefore, if let's just say it's not in this budget, then someone tells us, well, we're gonna put it into November. See, I feel you. In the November mod. Here's you guys. I am almost 80% sure it's going to die or almost 80% sure people are going to abstain and it's just not going to carry. Then becomes really interesting about one, I think we want to outline our position on City of Yes for Salamanca and Diana Ayala as the two city council persons. I am more concerned that they have where CB1 stands more than our board person. We just not going to make the deadline for them. And I guess we will be able to draft something with at least the knowledge of July 1st's budget, whatever that budget is, what was left in, what was left out, and how we feel about that. I think that will help us a lot. Okay, so that's where I wanted to, okay, any other, so I want to talk about supportive housing. I told you guys about affordability, and the last thing I want to talk about that brought up a lot is bedroom size. So I'll send you guys another article, but it's not common sense. The most affordable units created under Eric Adams were 1 bedrooms or studio. I'm not being dramatic. It is definitely assault for families. And the City of Yes presentation that I sent, they start off by saying there's like 0 units less than $1,500. And if there is, honey, if it's just a studio, that's not enough. And then they do this thing that I was like, stop lying. They're like, well, we're going to create a lot of studios because people are living in 2 bedrooms because there's not enough studios. And I said that directly to the DCP people that I spoke to yesterday. I was like, you guys say that in your presentation, like people live in 2 bedrooms and get a roommate, or 3 bedrooms and get a roommate, 4 bedrooms and get a roommate, because it's cheaper to share an apartment than to live in a studio or 1 bedroom. You give no evidence for that assertion. There's no evidence to prove that, and you know that. You know this. You can do the math. Someone can just crunch the numbers that it is cheaper to share a 2 bedroom whatever than live in a studio.
Yeah.
So I was very upset by that, because if we're giving you a tax incentive and you do give me 60%, you give me 60% AMI, and all you offer me is a 1 bedroom or studio, you have done nothing for the families of New Yorkers.
Mm-hmm.
There is a line, cut and paste, because remember it's a $1,300 amendment, that there is like someplace section 2700 in the proposed regs encourages 2 bedrooms.
Oh, that's nice.
It is like section 2700 in the regs. I got to control and F the raw document.
Not enough though.
2 bedrooms, not enough guarantees. We have, like in our housing crisis, we have supply, we have affordability, and we have unit size issues. And that is not cured regardless of how much HPD gets or something, but we have that. Our largest stock of family size unit is NYCHA, which we all know is not accessible. I'm also stressing you guys, when Section 8 was open for 2 weeks, 650,000 people applied. That means 650,000 people believe they need a Section 8 voucher. Whether they qualify or not, is to know that 650,000 believe they need Section 8 shows how alarming and concerning, and the focus on affordability is important. And anybody should be giving me, of the 650,000, how many have a family of 1 child, 2 children?
Not that I want to get off the topic, but my question about that Section 8 situation with NYCHA, okay, I understand they opened it up for Section 8 applicants because they haven't closed.
Yes.
But my question is, I thought that NYCHA is a development that goes according to people's income
Yes, it does.
when they round off their rent.
That's true.
So why is Section 8 necessary to begin with?
So
Is it going
NYCHA,
out the market right now?
no. NYCHA is a city agency
Yes.
that manages Section 8 and Section 9. That's all they do. It's the agency that controls this money, sort of like HRA controls food stamps, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So when you apply, so NYCHA, because it's the agency that distributes federal funding for people who are low income, when you apply for Section 8, because there's no more NYCHA, because Section 8, you apply through NYCHA for the Section 8 voucher, because that's NYCHA's job to distribute that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So
You can use Section 8 vouchers for private housing.
and you can do a Section 8 more voucher.
But you
So
have to apply for it through NYCHA.
exactly,
Ah,
NYCHA, because NYCHA controls it. When you get food stamps, you apply through HRA,
Even though they're federal dollars.
even though it's federal dollars.
I
Yeah,
thought I came directly from a federal.
it does. Everything NYCHA does is federal money. It manages federal money.
I see, but it's under the umbrella of NYCHA still.
Exactly.
Now, thank you for, because I couldn't understand that.
Yeah.
And I was saying, well, why is, so Section 8 is the idea that, because a person now has to go and find still their own apartment, and now they have to find out who accepts Section 8.
Yes.
And that will not necessarily be, so that doesn't mean that they want to get an apartment in NYCHA.
Yes.
That just means,
Exactly.
thank you for clearing that.
Exactly.
Thank you. Now I understand
I'm so happy.
what's
That's what we're here
going
for.
on. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. So that's where you see where my confusion came.
Of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, lots of bureaucracy.
Okay.
The only other thing that I wanted to ask, and if we ever do get the chance to have George do an analysis of this district, is one of the things that I raised earlier is the idea of infill in the developments, the NYCHA developments, and just something that I wanted to flag that looking at this presentation, the Washington houses with infill permitted by City of Yes Housing Opportunity, they have put all of these additional buildings, very tall buildings, and taken away a lot of green space. Green space, sunlight, wind, breeze, those things actually have a very large impact on public safety.
Mhm.
When you put additional people into a smaller space, when you create more concrete, even increasing the temperature in those spaces because of the sun,
Right.
it causes more hot-bloodedness, it causes more aggressiveness, and it can increase crime. So the idea that we could lose green space in our communities could have a negative impact on public safety
Right.
is something that I haven't read all documents, but I don't know how it's probably not addressed. And I know that there's supposed to be an environmental study done on the impacts of these types of changes, which I also feel like should happen before you vote on these things. But
Yes, it's finally here. I haven't read it though.
okay.
Well, that's an interesting situation, what you're talking about, because even me, look, we're dealing in front, right across the street from where I live on Cortland Ave, 2 blocks down, between 156 and 157. They're building a building, they say it's gonna be a senior citizen facility right across the street. That has been an empty lot for years. Gee, it must be a good 40 years ago that there was a fire there, just like the fires that happened here, okay? But to one extent, I'm gonna tell you the truth, I kind of missed the day and age when everything was burned down. I used to be able to look out my window and I could look all the way down into Third Avenue, into this area, because everything was green space. Oh yeah, there were empty lots, and those were aftermaths of the fire. But to one extent, I actually missed that, because now I'm starting to feel like we're suffocated. They build all these buildings around. Every time I turn, there's a new real estate.
Quick question. So the lot that is burned, the lot that is burnt down, that's NYCHA property?
No, that's not NYCHA property. That's going to be a privately owned building,
Okay.
which is I think it's going to be part of supportive housing, as a matter of fact, because I heard that it's going to be like a senior citizen.
Like,
Yeah,
okay,
similar to, yeah. But
So-
whoever comes there doesn't bother me. It's just that I'm looking at the structure itself, that everywhere I turn, there seems to be a structure. Even when I look all the way down into Mott Haven, there's a building covering the sun now. Has
So
anybody noticed that?
Yeah, well, I
When you
want to tell you
cross-
straight up, like, even for me now, this new building that came up
Mhm.
blocks the window from my kitchen. Here's the thing. One, let me start off by saying the infills. I want to explicitly say this fact that I got already, that's probably in some George's presentation, this thorough George's breakdown. Infills on NYCHA property, NYCHA states will be 100% affordable. There is no rule anywhere that it has to be 100% affordable. But NYCHA property is different from city property. I learned in multiple calls, I had to wrap my head around this, you guys. So NYCHA gets to decide what happens in their property, and they have said it would be 100% affordable. I brought up Fulton Elliott, which is mixed income.
Yeah.
They stated, so now the question is, NYCHA owns every property, even when people convert to PAC, right? Because they lease the buildings to the developer. They still own the land.
So it's still under RAD.
Yes, yeah. So, but
It's a private
yeah,
landlord coming in.
Fulton
Mhm.
Elliott is mixed development, meaning whatever units of NYCHA will remain. So let's say that they had like 9,000 units. They're building something with 18,000 units, 9,000 being Section 8 project units, and the other 8,000 being market rate. I'm concerned they will do that for the infills, but nowhere in writing. But Dan, head of housing, said he spoke to NYCHA, and NYCHA said, and George told me that too. George says, when you call Dan, he's going to tell you NYCHA said. So NYCHA said infills on their property will be 100% affordable. And so when you talk about safety, there is honey, this Dan guy, I know he got a master's in urban planning. He teaches at NYU sometimes. I Googled him. Because a lot of NYCHA Section 9 projects, Chicago, Miami, when they went private, they did mixed income, and they thought mixed income units would create safety.
Mhm.
However, because he's seen the same documentaries I saw, mixed income units created people different price points, and therefore they became a tension between NYCHA residents and these other market rate residents, and then police is there more than it should be there over stuff like why you cooking outside.
Noise violation.
Noise violation,
smells.
yeah, marijuana stuff. So DCP don't control NYCHA, okay? But, and nowhere in writing, so that is an outstanding question I have. Does anybody have it anywhere in permanent writing so it's not changing from mayor to mayor, that infill is gonna be 100% affordable, no more than maximum 50% AMI, maximum 60% AMI, so everybody's between 30 and 60 in the entire building. There's no writing in that, but when you talked about infills and safety, I can hear someone responding to you, Whitney, saying, well, mixed income is gonna make it safer there, blah, 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 but we know they also create this other issue.
Yeah.
I also don't know, because I haven't gone over the environmental study, we know the South Bronx has the highest rate of asthma, and I don't know if all these buildings gonna help with the asthma.
An addendum to that, it does say here that City of Yes eliminates parking requirements everywhere in New York City. Developers can still provide parking, but they are not required to do so.
So I want to talk about parking, because the parking we think is going to die. Dan says, don't say that, but he also says he thinks it's going to be modified. So there is very little chance that whatever they hope for parking is going to happen. Also, I was telling Dan, I don't be seeing new buildings with parking anyway. So there must be a way to get out of parking, because that new building over there ain't got no parking, and the Bruckner don't be having parking. So
It's not underground?
No, HPD and this development has not required for this board for a long period of time, parking
okay,
as part of development.
So this is what I'm gonna say. I already know if it's a fully affordable building, parking doesn't happen. That's already in a reg somewhere, okay? Yeah. But so I'm not talking about us. So that's the rule I learned. Fully affordable units from top to bottom can be exempt from the rule. So I was talking about these major private developments. I don't see no damn parking. And there's a ULERP process to get out of parking already. It's long, it's cumbersome. It can cost private developers $100,000 and plus in lawyer fees and processing. But currently, you may see a private development that is not fully affordable, that has found a way, costly or not, to get out of parking.
When you develop parking, you lose units.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, last year, and I see the organization, Catholic Charities POP Development, did a whole presentation last year. I remember at the general meeting, that was last year sometime, and that parking question, that was a big question about the development that they're proposing on that, because you're right, they don't have an incentive about where the parking is gonna be, and they showed us the whole presentation on the kind of development and the building and the housing and everything. I understand that's supposed to be the area on 149th Street there, closer to the Grand Concourse region. That's where that former restaurant Yolanda's used to be at, okay? But that's where that area is. They did a whole presentation, and that was a big topic. A lot of people asked questions about parking.
It has been a big topic for this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said, I go back to
that was the Catholic Charities POP development.
Not being a requirement.
Yeah.
So the ones that were done recently, you talked about Ms. Ortiz's Christopher Court, which you got the charity partner with, and a bunch of others. So, but it is my opinion that developers have been willing to swap out parking spaces and lose out on development fees they'll get for the units that they develop. So no parking, more apartments, higher density, and then more development fees.
All right, so I want to spend the last, is there any other hot topics? What I'm going to do for the committee is I'm going to create a Google Doc. I'm going to share it. please share your ideas, like the crime and stuff. And then try to think of all of this when I'm at the board report meeting. Even though I'm abstaining, I think there's always discussions and stuff. I don't know how they're going to do the voting different from this time and last time, but City of Yes Economic Opportunity, there was some discussion before the vote went in. Okay, so I hope they vote. If the DCP really wants people to vote like this, issue to issue. So I'm going to tell you that right now the low density is not relevant to us because we are not a low density place at all. We don't even understand what those people experience.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. Let's go to this real quickly.
So
Town-centered only. Support, do not support. Because I do want to know how the board, how are we going to?
Well, this doesn't apply to us.
Low density. This is low density. We're gonna flip the page. The first one is low density. Low density does not apply to us. So you're gonna flip to this one. This part
medium,
of
high density.
high, medium density. This is where we are. So university affordable preference. We obviously support that, but I feel like my position, this is a conversation we're having, is that it doesn't go further. It doesn't go far enough.
Not enough guarantees.
Not enough guarantees. So, like not enough guarantees. And then I guess I really hope George already put this in this long 30-page breakdown. So I can just pull up that Westchester and Boston have a 10% set aside. So a mandatory set aside. And DCP know what I was saying, but they were like, we think it's gonna impede development. And my response to him was that there's 8.4 million people here. Developers will come. No developers is passing opportunity.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You mean private? Because I believe that for public there is a mandatory set aside for residency, or you're talking about this mandatory set aside for what specific?
All building development.
All building development, right?
All development.
So any city down, I think it's 15%. I believe it went down from 20 plus. I mean, I'm guessing, but I think it's mandatory 15% for community residency.
Well, first of all, the fact that we are using public land for anything but universal affordability is wild and offensive. So I hope that is not the case. We are asking a set aside from private developers, but we are demanding full affordability from our own.
Yeah.
Okay, not enough mandatory set aside. Okay, so then comes costly parking mandates. I think, let me tell you something. I feel like if we voted on this at a full board meeting,
They would have to mandate parking.
they would
I
have
think our people would want.
I would vote no because I've never lived in a building with parking. I like a parking lot because I can't parallel park, but I'm not going to take away people's housing. I'd love to just pull right on in. But I want to support what the aggregate does.
Sure.
They can. It seems that everybody else from outside the neighborhood is getting parking except for the residences. And the reason why I'm doing that parallel is because I remember years ago, that was again the big thing that happened with when they built the Bronx Terminal Market. Okay, and the rumor is, which I actually believe the rumor, that it was actually built not necessarily to make a proper shopping area for the community. It was really built to give more parking space to the Yankee Stadium crowd. Mm-hmm. And I believe that. Even the way you see the structure, the way it's built, and the way and every time I go there, I believe it's not geared to the customers and the people from the neighborhood. See what I'm saying? So it seems that everybody else comes into our neighborhood and could make use of it, and they get parking, but I wonder how many residences that live in the area actually park there. Nobody. So first, they can't afford it, okay? And second of all, it's ridiculous to have to walk all the way over there to get your car.
So here's what I would say. One, for me, I guess people can park right here. There's a parking lot right next to Burlington. But I've lived in Brooklyn, I've lived in Harlem, I've lived in Queens, and now I live in the Bronx. I've lived in every single borough except Staten Island. I ain't never seen a parking lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, the brownstones in Brooklyn don't have pull-up parking lot. You just have street parking. So,
well, some of the Mitchell houses, and they just finished losing their parking. Yeah. The Concourse Village people always have their parking space.
So that's what
and they just lost it, and they lost it. Now they're scattered in the streets too because of how down the drain that came. Okay,
and go ahead.
I mean, it's a very different development, but Bankside has parking lot and it goes down. and they're able to still maintain like.
on top.
Yeah, they
So,
showed
I
me
mean-
some of the parking that was built last week when I went to the opening of the park space at Backslide. There was an opening ceremony, and I actually spoke to some of the residents that live there.
Where is that? Is that the thing near the water?
Backslide,
Waterfall.
yes, by the water, and they build, if you go back there, there's actually a park. I understand they're gonna build a cafe in there also, and I spoke to some of the residents who live there when I was browsing around early, last week when they did the opening of the park area, and heard what some of them had to tell me, okay? And they told me how much rent they're paying, okay? And
I mean, that neighborhood is very
and
expensive.
that was interesting to hear, when you actually talk to the residents themselves, and they told me, and they said, oh, they're opening, we didn't even know about that. Oh, but okay, which is, it's interesting the reaction they gave me because I got there kind of early before everything started. I took a walk all the way down to the other side of that's that Backslide Park area. And it all looks, they try to make it pretty on the outside, but when I spoke to some of the residences and they told me what they're dealing with, even what they have to do to get the parking, there's parking like under the building that they did make. But just to get that ticket, if you don't do it early in the year, you're not gonna qualify for it throughout the whole year. Even the monopoly of that.
Yeah, everyone's fighting for parking. If you do have a parking, there's a wait list for the parking. So in parking, I guess, if we were like making a best case scenario, the answer is yes. I do like this idea of underground parking, but I don't know how much drilling that requires. But honey, if the people want to park, people want to park.
I also think that like in these buildings where they would be able to develop parking underneath the building, for example, they're going to be charging a premium for those anyway. Like those are not necessarily our residents.
No. Convert non-residential building into housing. Yes. What are we supposed to do for that? Small and shared space.
So wait a minute. So citywide, live costly parking mandates. Are we in support or not support?
Support. No, not support. Sorry,
Not
good catch.
support, right?
Not
Because
support. Convert non-residential buildings to housing. Support. Absolutely. Small and shared housing. So this is the part that is chaotic to me. They're trying to make buildings that are all studio because they think it's going to help people. Who's that? Do y'all know people looking for studios?
No. I think even single individuals would rather live in a one bedroom than a studio. So I think people are only living in studios because that's the cheapest housing that they can find.
That is for one person.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's
even for
the idea of sharing kitchens and other common facilities is not. You know what? I'm not in support.
No, I don't think. I think
the answer is no to that. I think anybody who has their own apartment, I don't care if it's a studio, what it is now at this point, should not have to share their other facilities with anyone else. That's total chaotic.
Because what they're thinking is if they create these small shared housing, it's going to become more like it'd be market rate affordable. And nobody wants to live like this.
What you're going to end up with is like $2,200 shared common facilities with people.
Yeah, well,
just say you live in a village.
Share your common facilities.
With kids who have a hot plate and a microwave and a sink in a room.
Quality of life matters, and like I want to live in a house, but I don't have to give up so much to live in a house.
I think we're going back to the Charles Dickens era. You know, the Middle Ages, those stories where the bathrooms were in the kitchen.
No,
okay.
This is the first great analogy.
We're going right back to that era, the Middle Ages.
Completely.
You might as well put the bathroom in the kitchen back. Where those stories of some of those brownstones in Manhattan and everything, the urban areas back in the Middle Ages, and the bathrooms have to be in the kitchen because of kind of piping system.
Yeah.
And so I think, well, that's how people were living. So we might as well go back to that era. No, the answer is do not support. Okay, campus info.
Campus info. Now, I mean, here's the thing where we have issues because we bring up increasing crime because now you've taken away all the green space. We are concerned about who's infill because NYCHA infills need to be treated totally different.
Mm-hmm. I think
church with oversized parking. That's what they're saying.
Well, I think what they're talking about is, of course, my answer is already no to this. No, but I understand what this is proposing. And again, that person on our board who is against supportive housing is on one accord. We discussed that. What they did, they should have never tore down like that church they tore down in our district last year when they tore it down. that was a good building.
Mhm.
That was a good building, and it was a well-structured building. I think they should have remodeled it and rehabilitated it correctly. And I don't care if they had to make maybe a multi-purpose community center out of it, then okay. But I was in disagreement with them tearing down that building.
Mhm.
And I know that they're going to tear it to build housing in it, but my answer was no to that. I think many of us voted against that.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's what this is. So the answer is no. Do not support. No.
So I would say one,
I think we support with conditions.
we support with conditions, so that's why I wrote.
I do not support that because I know what this is all about. No, my
I
answer
don't
is no.
support it. Yeah.
Oh,
Frankly.
wow.
See, I think
With
they
no
should go
conditions,
with-
there's no form of you to support it in film.
No, because I already see what they've done. They have knocked down too
There's a
many
need
good
for it.
buildings.
Well, this isn't about knocking any buildings down, but it's about filling up spaces that currently don't exist. So for that church, for example, that you were just speaking about, instead of them knocking it down, if that church has a parking lot, they could build a second building.
It didn't have a parking lot, and it
So
didn't
they-
have a whole yard, a whole backyard.
Yeah,
to
they would
it.
take that.
So
Yeah.
they would take
They
that
had a whole
space and
courtyard
create
to
housing
it.
out of it. They wouldn't knock any of those buildings down.
Well, I think they should have done something else with it.
Yeah.
And they're knocking down too much green space. And even me, on a personal level, because I'm even thinking of the community garden that we're in, which is actually most
a
of
good
these gardens are part of the Parks and Recreation Department. But the city can come in any day and say, guess what? This is a good spot to build a condominium. And there goes our battle. There goes the battle hymn of the Republic. Okay, where they go, you know. Yeah, oh yeah, they could do that.
Yeah.
It belongs to the Parks and Recreation Department. Okay, that's my understanding of it. None of these community go, and it has enough of there's even a coalition, the Merrill's Environmental Association Committee that was formed around that garden to try as the advocacy group and everything. But any day now, if the city comes in and says, guess what?
I can get what you're saying a little bit, Argelia,
Mhm.
is because in the Giuliani administration, where these parks had no real affiliation of this empty lots and the community, but the community had got together to create green spaces in those lots. There was a time in the Giuliani administration where there was a big fight where the mayor, again, looking at his housing plan, wanted to start building on those empty lots.
It already
So
happened.
I can get the concern when there's no definitive, where it's pretty open to allow that to happen. So I'm just gonna not expand any further and give it back to the chair.
Well, that
But
has
I get
already
the
happened.
understanding that was a fear that happened in the 90s, where if green
They weren't
space wasn't
protected.
protected, then it was free for anything to happen.
Why don't you agree? Or I just wanted to hear
Go
your.
ahead.
It's like ideologically, like I don't necessarily agree because I think there is a need for there to be more like community spaces, like courtyards, like parks.
So you don't want to lose any of that.
I think there's alternatives here that we should be exploring, you know, like markets, like how do they come together to do their thing, you know, like I would like to see more of that, if anything. Yeah, and I do feel like just like with the existing housing stock, there needs to be a plan to include HPD so that they can like really push these landlords to do repairs.
So
You know.
I wanted to say something is about infills HPD was I haven't read the environmental study. That's number one. Number two, public. I am concerned about our public space because so the advantage of public space is that the city has more say on affordability units, more say on how the units are constructed and things of that nature. So infills on public spaces feels like a way to increase our affordable unit stockpile. So that's how I feel. But then I didn't think about our community gardens. I didn't think about how much they'll take. You see what I mean? And which one will they take? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then that brings up, but like some things make sense. Like when I was walking here, came from court, I was like, the old precinct. Chop it up, break it down, give it to HPD immediately. Yes, immediately sell it. Okay, give it to HPD.
One of the community board movements
No, HPD, we got,
That has trauma in it. We don't want that.
And
We
we
don't
housing.
want that juju.
No sage can get rid of that.
No.
Or if they build housing and they do some commercial in the bottom of that housing,
Yeah.
then, but I think it could be housing. And there's a courthouse. Is there like old courthouse at a city?
That old courthouse right here on Washington Avenue.
Not owned by the city.
That
it's
has
not,
been a
right.
debate now for years.
But I heard it's not owned by the city. It's not owned by the city either.
Yeah.
Perhaps on a case by case basis, but I do agree. I think there's like serious like social determinants of health that should be considered in all this, because there's a lot of social reproductive impacts that like just building a random building in the middle of like all these other buildings.
They took the Sparford. That's when I say they took the old Sparford building and developed housing out of it. Tore it down.
What is Spartanburg building? What is it?
So juvenile detention.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And they made an affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
Yeah.
Like full, yeah.
Yeah, but it used to be a prison.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So when we talk, so infills are different than public property. Infills is saying the courtyard in a NYCHA housing could go, or like you said, technically, community garden is an infill is an infill that turned into a garden. You know what I mean? So I totally understand that converting the precinct, converting a juvenile delinquency center has nothing to do with infills, but it's still public land. So then there's this idea. What I hear is, like for example, Rikers is about to be a huge amount of public land that is not easy to get to, but neither is Staten Island and other places in the outskirts of many other boroughs and many other parts of Queens. So, there are some community public space that are not even utilized at all. 40% they're about to empty out, and that can be utilized versus trying to take people's green space. Okay, I hear it.
And it has already happened. It has. I want you to one day take a look at right here in our district, La Casa de Shema, El Rincón Criollo, right here on Brook Avenue. That's part of our district. And Shema was a guy who everybody thought was crazy. There was an empty, abandoned lot. And this man took with his own hands and started picking it up and cleaning it up.
Oh, wow.
And turned it into a community. It actually was like a cultural center.
Wow.
Of course, it turned it into a garden of growing and everything, but it turned into a small haven. And that was back then when everything was, again, burned down. And it was a junkyard. That was back with Mayor Koch, before Giuliani even came. And then during Giuliani, I think, was when a developer came and said, I want that land. That looks like a nice area. It's next to transportation. It's right here next to 149, next to 3rd Avenue. And they developed a building there. And the garden got destroyed. What happened, they gave them the choice that was made was several blocks up on Brook Avenue. You could have this space and redo your garden. But by that time, that's what did bring us together. That was a big lesson to teach. Look what happens when we can't advocate and we can't. So his family, his 2 daughters, Desiree, one of these days they'll probably come here, and so forth, but they're part of the district. We got together with the community, wrote out petitions and everything, but we had no choice but to settle for the 2 blocks up the land. But they built that building there, and they destroyed the garden that was originally built by Shema, by that man. Okay, and we had to take that, and then had to even do stronger advocacy, because now it's sad that unfortunately we had to learn from that mistake of, we just can't make these social havens and not have it together and not know what our rights are when it comes to land, especially after we developed it into what it was. But they took it over, and there's a building there today, and they built what they felt like building there. And now they gave us that. So now we had to fight for that too. Okay, because again, Parks and Recreation said, we don't have jurisdiction over who can come and real estate. You folks are forgetting that real estate is a profit-making industry. Okay, so if they're paying us so much money for that land, we had to go advocate again. Went to Albany ignored us. Had to take it all the way to Washington, D.C. Now the congressman's gone about PBS, Smithsonian came and gave us a grant. Had to do a whole program, a whole TV thing. Some of you, Smithsonian came, and it was that main grant that made the congressman, back then it was Congressman Serrano, hop on the van, and we turned it into a landmark. Now they can't touch it. Now, you see what I'm saying? But I know that not everybody's going to go through that. I know that it's a big cultural center. Kids come there, they take drumming classes, they take dancing classes now. Okay, of course, the agriculture is coming. You've got green thumb, you've got teaching people about healthy eating, vegetables and everything, how to grow the seeds, how to do this. But to get to that point, I know that not everybody is going to end up in Washington, D.C.
Right.
We had to make a major rally and get federal funds. The Smithsonian got all involved in it and everything. And now it's been declared a national, it's a landmark. The real estate can't touch it now. But I'm just saying, we never thought that somebody was going to take it over to begin with.
Okay, so I do want to sign out that Senator Serrano is in charge of landmarks and other parts of safe. We need to utilize that.
Okay.
Interesting.
But anyway, and I didn't mean to take that longer, but I just wanted to give a sample. So it's do not support. Wait, we went up to
we're at miscellaneous.
Okay, well, these are miscellaneous.
So
new zoning districts.
So new zoning districts, I really don't know what that is, but I do want to just tell you it's page 16 of this big report. Not big report, but it's page 16.
Can I ask a question?
Tell me.
Is there any indication of the governance of these new units or buildings that are being built that they're hoping to build, and like whether it's the infill, because we have a clear indicator of like AMI, and mandatory inclusionary housing and whatnot, as well as UAP. But that's all within the assumption that like a lot of these units are rentals. And so I'm curious to know if there's any ownership. Are these buildings co-ops? Are these buildings?
No, well, so what happened is, so 60% AMI is also what they will use to build condos too. They would price them at a 60% AMI or things of that nature. But a lot of the talks we're talking about rentals. I haven't talked about ownership, but when they say housing, no one talks about condos, but that would be in housing. Co-op would be in housing. But we don't know what they're building. They tend to build rentals. So private developers tend to exclusively build rentals. I haven't seen them build condos and co-ops in a while. But not to say that I'm looking, but I haven't seen that in a while.
There is something happening at the board that you guys passed on 140th Street. They're taking brownstones and converting them to.
Oh, we voted that already.
Yeah, we voted that once.
Yeah.
That's a recent development that's happening.
Yeah, but like that is a conversion. But yeah, they're converting them.
But they're not building them.
Not like
Via Verde.
Via Verde. No.
Yeah,
Exactly.
What are they converting them into?
Condos. But but they're already like brownstones.
I heard about that. Yeah.
So on the new zoning districts, I just read through this very quickly on page 16. But it sounds like they would be added to the zoning resolution, but not placed on the zoning map. So, in order to place a new zoning district on the map, it'd have to go through a ULURP process. So we would still get a chance
to vote
on that every time that it comes up. And the considerations that George calls out is that it would make future mapping decisions easier to have the ability to add them at any point in time to the map. But if we were concerned about density in our district, then that does make it easier for them to add at any time. So I think that that's a question about, we're never going to be a low density district.
Nope.
So is it so much of a concern that we are a medium? We're a high density district.
Medium to high.
We're medium to high. Are we concerned about just being high?
So I mean,
That's a good question.
I think she would say yes. I can't see my view.
Yeah, I think some
Yeah,
people would say yes.
I think
There are too many people in the Bronx already, but honestly, I don't know that it's actually that crowded.
I would say, I think for me, we can either abstain versus say support or not support.
Or maybe, I also feel like one of the considerations of increasing the density is like public transportation and utilities. Like, what are we doing?
Infrastructure,
infrastructure to support the infrastructure around. So long as and for future consideration through a ULURP process, ensuring that future community boards consider the infrastructure development alongside housing development or these new zoning districts.
Yeah. And I think eventually, then the concern is going to be, are there enough schools? Are there
Right.
enough this?
Yeah,
Is there enough
exactly.
that? So,
Is there enough Department of Sanitation? Where are the trash cans?
Honey, I was yelling at him recently about they call basket counts. I was like, what's the basket count of that? Because there's too many trash. everywhere. Okay, so that's consideration. So do not support with conditions?
Yeah.
Okay. So then there's the mandatory inclusionary housing, which we know what that is, but you guys know MIH is only required if you increase density. It's only mandatory if you increase density. So if you do not increase density, then it is not mandatory. And so this is why we don't like about the optional things.
Yeah.
So the Bruckner development, if was created post 2016, then it would fall under MIH.
Yeah.
So, but this new building that just went up falls under nothing because technically it didn't
And it doesn't
increase
increase
density.
And that's because it's the same number of units?
I have no idea how you even do the math on this. I gotta call George. I'm saying density increase. I have no idea. I'm using the right terms, but I don't know effectively what increases our density.
Yeah. So maybe we figure that out.
What does it mean to increase our density? But my biggest thing is I don't want anybody to opt in. I just want automatically set aside MIH. You know, set aside.
So as opposed to allow deep affordability option, you want guaranteed
Yeah, guaranteed.
affordability option.
This
Yeah.
would be guaranteed.
So I think as written, we do not support.
Yeah, do not support with modifications. I don't know what silver law is, but you guys know.
Oh, it's about elderly people.
Oh, I didn't know that. I learn something new every day.
I think, hold on. Nope, I lied.
It wasn't?
No, that's a stupid name for a law. Because it should be about elderly people. Allow narrow lots to achieve underlying quality housing height. The silver law limits buildings less than 45 feet to the width of the street if the building is not adjacent to a taller building.
Oh, I get it.
Do you?
I mean, it's like Alexander Avenue, right?
In other words,
Yeah, what does that
It's
mean?
like
More?
everything is like the same.
The situation of the way the shadow of that building implies on another building. That's why this law was made, because there was actually a lot of tenants.
Single lane, the width of the street was single lane.
Yeah,
Prevent tall, slender buildings that were taller than the buildings that they abut.
yeah, and this thing happened, there were big protests when
A
those
protest?
well, people were protesting about when some of the skyscrapers were being built in the neighborhoods. And let's say, for example, I understand as a matter of fact, with a lot of the brownstone tenants that complained about that situation, that now you've got a building that's actually overshadowing our brownstone house.
They'll get natural light.
And yeah, they can get light, but it wasn't only light, it was that it was obstructing, it was a combination of obstructing a view. Not only obstructing the view, it was also making the street even more narrow now, because the way these buildings are built, they were built on the same lane of the brownstones.
It's kind of weird though, because you look in Harlem, some brownstones have extended their originality footprint.
Yeah.
Some of them were taller.
But that's how that, I understand, that's how that sliver law came about.
But you can, if the building next to you is taller, you can get a little more space. I don't know how that works.
These were, it's interesting how they're phrasing. Yeah, these were tall, skinny buildings. These were, I mean, it's interesting how they, look at some of the places, even around that Soho area. Try to see how some of those, they were like tall, skinny buildings that were being, and that's what made them stop.
Right.
I understand, okay? Even if you look towards, in Greenwich Village, like next to NYU around there, look at some of like the housing comparing to the skyscraper, and that's why that law was made, and you'll understand why the people got upset.
It's like
about.
Is it like the railroad apartments?
A little bit, but the railroad apartments have their own, like far away from the houses, though, okay? So it didn't impact that much. But when you have a building right across from you that is now actually creating a shadow, literally speaking, that's what it was doing. That's what got the, and I understand that's how come that law was passed. So you're not supposed to have a building on the same lane of, like, let's say a house, or one that's shorter, like some of these older buildings that are not made even that tall. And now, literally speaking, you've got all these modern buildings are built on a certain height. Nobody's going to build a modern building with just 5 floors. That is a fact.
Okay, so
Okay.
to get us, I was hoping for 7:30. I missed that mark.
Oh,
But go ahead.
I was just gonna say, quickly, so there's an idea here, again, in Georgia's considerations, there's an idea here that the Silver Law trips up smaller developers.
That's
So you're
right.
thinking like individual developers or people, individual owners, as opposed to like conglomerates who are building big buildings.
So because the small developer is going to do 5 floors. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because that's all they got.
Because that's all they would be able to afford.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing that he mentions here is that this could be used as an incentive to provide affordable housing to instead of being provided to all developments. So this would whatever height that they wanted to, but if we did not support it, if it did not pass, or if we support it with the condition that it actually only be utilized in affordable housing.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you guys do? Support.
Okay. So we're gonna put we're supporting.
Support with the
right?
condition of,
That would be an incentive for affordable housing development,
especially for small developers, because
especially for smaller developers. That I like. I don't know why they would write it that way.
who knows? First of all, who thought we'd be talking about zoning law? This is crazy.
This is not what I'm planning on doing. Quality housing program. Sorry. George is ticked off by all of this, I gotta say.
I mean, first of all, the fact that they have George is like so gangster. Because you guys, I just blindfold called him, and he was on the phone with me. He already knew what people were going to answer me. He already said, I already asked that. This is what they're going to tell you. It's so funny. Shout out to George.
Okay, quality housing amenity changes. Extend amenity benefits in the quality housing programs to all multifamily buildings, and update to improve incentives of family-size apartments. Trash storage and disposal, indoor recreational space, and shared facilities like laundry, mail rooms, and office space.
What they want us not to have those things?
It says extend amenity benefits to all multifamily.
You know, that laundry topic is, I don't want to take up too much time here today because it's actually time for us to go, right? But,
Yes.
But that laundry situation has always been very debatable with me personally, okay? Because I always felt they should make enough space for people to have their own washing machine in their apartments.
That's
But
not
of
what this
course,
is talking about.
but
These are
no,
shared
I know,
amenities.
but they're talking about shared amenities because obviously people have to share amenities when they don't have the actual, well, that's how I see it. But that's just my interpretation of things. So no, not everybody thinks like I do. I realize that.
So it seems, yes.
Yeah, I would support that.
Because I didn't know there was buildings that had issues having it. You know what? I also need to read this one.
Yeah.
Okay, landmark transfer development rights. Makes it easier for landmarks to sell unused development rights to expanding transfer radius and simplify the procedure. This feels harmless, but everything that feels harmless with DCP is harmless. Is harmful.
I just allow an as of right landmark development rights transfer. So for a church that exists, then that church could definitely sell its parking lot for development purposes as of right. Like we wouldn't get a chance to
Talk about it. No, I don't like when we can't vote on things.
Well,
At DCP,
DCP.
every document they have provided is to cut. They said the ULURP process is so tedious. And I said, well, that's their money.
When it comes to churches, once it's declared abandoned, it was declared like again.
I was
like
just
that
using
church
churches
that
as an
was.
example.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know
that's a good
whether
example
landmarks.
But I do want to tell you,
Because many of those are landmark
Community
buildings.
Services of New York, some organization that really wants NYCHA to be able to sell their no sky
Oh, their air rights.
air rights. I use rights to help with development. and they really wanted they want that to be part of a companion package
Okay.
for City of Yes, but it is going to be a very costly environmental study.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I do want to share that with you guys. Okay.
Okay, so we are landmark transferable development rights, we support it?
No.
Okay.
Railroad right away.
Simplify and streamline provisions for development.
I feel like that's
Involving
probably
former
a
railroad
support.
right of way. That was the big issue on the bank slide. I spoke to someone at the bank slide.
Oh, there are railroads over there.
Yeah, and they had a big.
But don't they move? Isn't that an active
Well,
railroad?
they had to
Around
negotiate a
Hostos.
lot with the
Hostos.
MTA. The MTA did not give them permission because one of the guys, one of the developers was telling me, again, at that park opening event, that they wanted to expand that park and everything, but because of the MTA voting against it, they were not able to do that.
Mm.
So that is, yeah, there is a railroad
Right,
there,
yeah.
and he was telling me about that. And there has been a conflict with the MTA, and there was a lot of compromise and negotiations that had to take place because of the MTA's presence there in that railroad. And it does it gets used a lot for the import-export,
Right.
like trains, that pass by there and everything. Yeah, not necessarily public, like the Metro North is a whole different track.
For sure.
But that's why that Bronx Terminal Market exists there, because that was where they undocked, they used to dock and everything. And that railroad is still being used, but the MTA controls it, I heard.
So here's the thing: do we want to talk about this or not? This is the biggest. The biggest thing is they want to get rid of the city council process to streamline it.
Yeah. But my question is, we don't know how many railroads are in our district. Right? Like, how much do we really care about this?
Well, good point. So we have to say no answer. We can't.
No, I do care about that when it's time to, like I said, extend.
I know. I think about this only because this is not housing.
If that railroad's not being used, hey, we can make a parking space out.
The waterfront is going to be on or near a railroad.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Right next
And
to
that's an issue right now. Yes.
Right next to Lincoln Hospital.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's a railroad, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's a whole, there's a bridge.
All in regards, it's in our district, it's a railroad. We have there's a railroad that runs in the Bankside Park, outside the boundaries of Bankside.
Are those MTA or those
MTA? The one on Backslide is
Waste management. I heard about that.
Well, because I don't know what this is referring to then. Like, I don't know if it's referring to MTA, if it's referring to city services, or if it's referring to like old railroads that used to from the 19th century.
Well, both the special permit for development within over a railroad or transit right of way. So any of that would be eliminated and would be replaced with two authorization, one from the railroad right of way under 4 acres and over 4 acres.
I think we need, in my opinion, Chair, if I may, I think we need City Council to be the safeguard. To eliminate them will be a mistake. So, and the community board. But we do have the railroad in Port Morris over the Bronx Brewery. We do have the railroad in the Hollywood Yards. It's our district that runs through some very beautiful green space. And then we have and around our boundaries of our we have the waste management that runs against Bankside Park. We have railroads there. It's on our waterways.
Yeah, so do not support.
Do not support. City council must safeguard. All right, so that's just kind of give you an idea. You guys, there's more issues in here. Of course, George did. I don't know how he reads 1,300 pages, but that's his job. So he pays him to do that. So again, I want to say, wait, I have it up here. Right? Okay. So City of Yes, we talked about TOPA. So this is technically our last official meeting for the year. Hopefully, in the summer, we have interns we want to activate and engage around TOPA in preparation, and hopefully get a draft. We can do that on Google Docs, a draft of the City of Yes. Our statement in support and against, which is just pretty much what we did, but with explanations. The part that's relevant to us. The rest will be no position. And so that is the goal this summer. Hopefully you guys keep your ears on the ground for, also we will see what letters in support for modifications we would have to do for the city budget. If those things that we hope happen and we think it's important to happen, so we want to make sure our City of Yes statement in support or against or yes with modification is also going to encompass in tandem that press release, like that hopefully $732 million for HPD, $3.6 billion over the next 5 years for affordability. But what we cannot forget is that we are in a housing crisis, which is threefold: supply, affordability, and size. So if their goal is to fix this problem, then we need to throw some money at it.
Yeah.
And we need to be committed to it. And I don't know who wrote that press release, but that person really, it's a beautiful written press release, you guys. They really said all the issues. So we want to make sure that we write our letter for City of Yes and in that advocacy for some of those fundings, because this is not going to solve the problems it needs to solve if the money doesn't come. All right. Is there anything else we want to flag and discuss? Because obviously during the breaks we have time to research and we have interns in the office that can be activated. Any issues we look forward to? State didn't pass a lot of things. I mean, they passed some stuff, but
I'll just note that the building in Port Morris that is
Yeah.
going through TOPA right now is 700 East 134th Street.
oh yeah, so-
34.
And they've been doing that process since
Oh, yeah.
2017.
yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised they're still going for it.
134th.
Yes, they're very, very close.
Between
I thought they
what
were already
avenues is that? That's
Gotcha.
in between what avenue? Is that next to?
That's like
Okay, but I'll look it up. No, but I'll look it up.
Yeah,
Thanks
so-
for letting us know.
And
Thank
and one of the faces of that project applied to be our community board. I hope she gets in and sits on our committee. So I'm very excited for her, actually. But yeah, so we'll do some TOPA stuff for sure. And anything else you guys hear about how we can be a feather? Oh, you guys, supportive housing, a little bit of supportive housing in everywhere is something we also want to stay on top of. And something, even though that's not a point in City of Yes, it's something we want to make sure we address in our letter. Okay, it was so nice working with you guys for the year.
Thank you
And
for
look
your
forward to you guys.
Thank you. I think
Yeah,
you're a great
likewise.
leader, and I think.
Oh, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Oh, okay. I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Whitney Williams second.
Okay, the meeting is
All
adjourned.
in favor, say aye. Aye. Any abstentions?
Yay. Oh, yes, it's only two of us.